Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Jani.tv. This is Janakiram. For a long time, I've been planning to do a talk show to introduce some of the biggest influencers and community evangelists from the cloud ecosystem. I'm excited to announce a brand new series called Community Star, where I'm going to bring you some of the rock stars from our industry. Ask them questions about their career, their perspective, and bring some of the unique opinions and unique advices from them to the developers and DevOps engineers. Community Star is a brand new program which will cover the entire spectrum of people coming from the developer advocacy, developer relations, and technology evangelism world. And I'm very, very excited to launch this today. I'm thrilled to kick off this series with an individual who is highly accomplished, who is an inspiration to a lot of developers, a lot of DevOps engineers, and a lot of aspirants in the tech industry. She doesn't need any introduction, and I couldn't have asked for any other individual than her to kick off this series. Popularly known as the Cloud Girl, she is known to bring technology in an extremely simplified form through her sketches, visuals, highly viral videos, and of course, a bestseller book to her credit. She is none other than Priyanka Vergadia, and I'm extremely thrilled and excited to have her on the show.
Hi, thank you so much for having me, Jani.
So, Priyanka, it is an honor to have you on my show, and particularly for the very inaugural session. So, it's been a while since we met. We went on stage together at Google Cloud Next, I think in October in Bangalore. And since then, I've been trying to line up this interview. So it feels wonderful, and I admire your work. I absolutely love everything that you do in social media, and you are actually teaching not just the technology, but how to build a personal brand. And today, I'm going to ask you a lot of questions that the community wants to ask you. So, coming from a small town, you made it big. You went all the way to Google and you made a mark for yourself. And then you actually built a fantastic personal brand. You know what it takes to create viral videos. And then, of course, you are like a very popular, celebrated speaker speaking all over the world. So, a lot of questions to ask you. So, let me get started. Joining Google is a dream for a lot of developers and a lot of technologists. It is like the mecca for almost everyone. And you actually started from a small town city in India and went all the way to Google. So can you walk us through your experience, your journey of making it from Ujjain, which is your hometown, to Silicon Valley?
Yes, thank you for that question. There are so many points in that journey from Ujjain, which I went to school up until seventh grade, and then moved to Indore. So part of my growing up is in Ujjain and Indore, sort of combined. I went to undergrad in Indore in the SGSITS college for my electronics and telecommunication. I did my undergrad in that as and then I got really excited about the prospect of studying in the US because I was always interested in adding a practical touch to the engineering aspects, and I was fascinated by trying to do that with a master's. And I also wanted to, along with that master's, do a computer science degree with it. So that's kind of how I ended up with into University of Pennsylvania in 2009. And from there, the career in tech had started. Right, like I was always a math major, but and did the electronics and telecommunications. So I was always in tech, but the career in like software engineering and cloud side of things sort of started to evolve with the masters, and after that, as I got into the professional world, and the first job and the first internship was at a cloud company. It was a SaaS product, and it got me an introduction into what cloud means. And 12 years ago, being at a startup that is a SaaS company was, I think, the best thing, because it cloud was just starting out. It was just starting to become popular, and that got me an introduction into what cloud is, and it kept me intrigued about getting to learn more of cloud. So started with SaaS, then I moved into another company that was about uh, again SaaS, but APIs and developer related products, and then got more and more into cloud from there to building infrastructure in cloud and leveraging the infrastructure in cloud. So that's kind of how, like, multiple different switches in jobs to get me to the knowledge that I was craving from each of the different switches that I'd made to Google. I can totally dive deeper into each of those areas, but there's also another turning point that happened in, like, just growing personally through this process. So that one path that I just talked about was the technical path of, like, me getting an introduction into cloud, and then wanting to keep going deeper and deeper into that, which is how I ended up into the exploring the spectrum of all the cloud infrastructure and things, got to Google. The other part of it, or the other path that was also going on in parallel in terms of personal growth, was uh, am I enjoying what I'm doing, right? So I continue to ask myself that, and with my first job, I ended up as a software engineer in tests. So I was writing silicon tests and sorry, selenium tests. And then there was this other tool, because I was at a company that was building interactive voice responses. So there was a tool called Hammer. We were writing Python test cases. So I was responsible for creating regression tests and suites and things like that for about a year or so. I was like, okay, this is great, but I wasn't sure what was missing. So I started exploring a little bit more, um, and that's when I explored this idea of being an engineer who is customer facing. And I was talking to the teams that were working with me around me, and they were sales engineers. So I said, "Hey, can I tag along into a customer meeting?" This was a startup, so it was very easy to ask for things like this and be like, "Sure, tag along. You can present this video or this demo or this particular pitch," right? And that got me into this world of exploring the engineering thought process and the engineering skills to solve business problems. And I was absolutely enjoying that for the time that I negotiated with this team. It's like, I'm going to try this out. And 3 or 4 months in, I was like, how do I switch into this team? Because I'm absolutely loving what I'm doing here. And then from there, I knew that for at least near term few years, I would definitely want to enjoy and explore this aspect of continuing to use software engineering skill set along with solving problems for the customers. So I knew that, like, that was that second parallel path of my growth from the personal perspective. And as I moved into that area, I explored a little bit more of, like, oh, I really enjoy explaining things and learning things, and then distilling them in a format that's easier for people to learn. So that kept me going from there into exploring the ideas of presenting to larger audiences and creating videos, and that got me into DevRel eventually. So that's one path, and then the other was I wanted to go deep into the tech. So um, that's my journey from schooling to today.
Excellent, excellent. So Priyanka, apart from being a technologist, it's very important to be a good communicator. And one of the big challenges that I see for folks, particularly coming from India and Asian countries and dreaming to make it big in the tech world, is learning the right way of communicating, whether it is verbal communication or written communication or articulating complex technologies. And I see you being very good at demystifying complex technologies and communicating very effectively. If you may share tips on how did that happen, and how did you really pick up those skills, and how important do you think are those communication skills to be successful?
Important, right? And it's not just about being like, those communication skills are not just important to be a developer advocate. They're, I think I would argue that they're important to be even a successful software engineer or whatever the role that you're picking in tech. Communication skills are like the top here, right? And how do you grow them, or how do you get better at them? Some people are naturally good at them, but it's a skill that can be developed. And the way you do that is, you first try and learn. So, and your method of learning could be totally different than my method of learning, right? Some people learn with hands-on, some people learn with documentation and then go hands-on. So depending on whatever your path is to learn the thing, because you have to make sure that you know enough of it in order to be able to explain something. That's when, so find the path for how you would learn whatever it is that is of interest to you or that you're trying to explain, and then go pretty deep in it. Like, no, don't just, because some people think that explain, like, you can just explain or create a short video or write a blog, but in order to summarize something, it's very hard to summarize something, if you only scratch the surface of it. So the first step is to actually learn and to go deep into a topic, and then the second step that I usually follow is, can I explain this in whatever format fashion. And then the third is, how do I improvise on my explanation so that it's done in a concise, short manner. So if you focus on those three steps, that's how you get to being able to communicate in a way that's easy to understand to other people. Now, in that third step, you can add bunch of different things, right? You can add your flair of, like, I do sketches because I'm interested in doing stuff like that. If you're not into that, you could make infographics using lots of tools out there, right? It's up to you how you do that third bit. But that third bit, to get to that third and this and the succinct or precise explanation, those first two steps are just extremely important. And don't skip on, like, don't try to find like easier ways to, like, oh, I'll just read this one thing and maybe I'll be able to explain it. No, you have to really spend some time learning it, and then genuinely trying to learn and understand it, and then explain it. That first explanation can be big, long, doesn't matter. Then you go to, like, making it smaller. Being creating some of the 1 minute videos is the hardest thing to do, because you need to really know the matter to know that these are the 3 points that are worth mentioning, and everything else will not matter in this 1 minute video, right? So hopefully that's helpful.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, if there is a takeaway from this, I think everyone should have a framework for learning, which I call as meta learning. The methodology changes, it actually shifts. It's very different from one individual to the another, but it's very important to figure out what is your meta learning methodology looks like. And the same thing is applicable to communication. Not everyone can be the same. So you got to figure out what is your style of communication, how unique are you, and how your practice and how your methodology of becoming better is evolving. I think those two are very important. And Priyanka, I think we are going to have another dedicated session to understand more about content creation, the gear that goes behind it, the behind the scenes stuff, because you set a bar on how to deliver these highly appealing, highly viral, interactive videos. So I'm going to set up some time to understand more about it. So now coming
Yep.
back, in India, every time I speak to students, every time I speak to aspiring software professionals very early in their career, their dream is to make it to Google. So tell me about your experience of getting interviewed at Google. And I know you are very successful at Google. You have literally become the face of Google Cloud, and you are a celebrity. I have seen people lining up to take selfies with you. So first of all, it's not easy to get to Google, which you made it. And second, you made a mark within Google and rest of the cloud ecosystem as a passionate evangelist. So tell me about that. Tell me about how you made it to Google and your whole experience of growing within Google.
Okay. How I made it to Google was totally some like everybody else. I never thought, right? I never thought that this is where I would be. Um, it it was when I started to become really good at explaining technology to customers. This was at obviously previous experiences, right? That's when I started to think maybe this is something and I've been enjoying it for working in that area for quite some time. I loved cloud. I wanted to grow further. So Google Cloud was evolving at the time. It was pretty new. It was there were investments being made in cloud. This was in 2017. So I thought maybe there'll be a time when I could end up at Google Cloud. But I wasn't really like thinking very hard about it like everybody else. I was like, who would get me into Google? There's no way. Like everybody else thinks like this, right? But I was very confident on the skill set that I had developed. So when a recruiter reached out, they said that we are hiring in cloud, and this is a customer engineer, customer facing role. I was like, all the interviews I had given at Google in the past were like, I can't make it. This is not the type of stuff I'm really good at. But I knew that this time, I know that this is my strength. The customer engineering interview, this is the first time they're evolving this team that's making it bigger. So it's like, when they reached out, I was very intrigued and I was like, okay, let's explore. Maybe there's a chance this time because this is actually a role that matches my skill set. Yeah, and that ended up being ended up working out with like 5 different rounds of interviews. And it involved very practical approach with interviewing where there was a customer scenario and there was a demo that I had to make on Google Cloud that was to build a website, and a few more interviews that were along the lines of like, how would you solve a certain problem? So problem solving type things. But I absolutely had fun, and it naturally led into this role at Google, which was so this is the story. The moral of this particular part of the story is, when just focus on developing the skill set, and when the time and the when the time with the skill set matches, or the roles match the your skill set, that's when it's the perfect match, and you won't really have to force that to happen. So whatever, like, that's kind of where I was. Like, I wasn't really trying to get into Google, but I was definitely enjoying what I was doing and developing my skill set wherever you are. So when you do that and you find like the opportunities, then it just works when the time and the opportunity comes along. So that was one.
Fascinating.
How I Yeah, right. And how I have grown. I think there were two questions to your initial part, like how I've grown over time within Google. I have I just try to stay true to yourself is what I always say, and that's what I have tried to do. If I'm not having fun, or if I've stopped having fun, for everybody, this definition or the time frame is different. So for me, if I stop having fun in the job, then it is time to think about how do I make it fun, or how do I, in the same job, or how do I explore more around me so that I can bring back the fun. And that's what I ended up doing. So I had, for me, the journey was, I had been working with directly with customers for quite some time. Even before I joined Google. So this was like about 5-6 years of customer relationship, and solutions architect, solutions engineer, all of those roles. And now I was obviously exploring the idea of or getting introduced to the idea of doing it more in a broadcast and a more impactful way, for like, how do I scale myself from 1 to 3 customers to hundreds of customers at the same time. And that's kind of where DevRel started to become more appealing. When I was doing more of the same demo to so many people, it's like, oh, we can make a video out of this. And that's kind of that moving into the area of developer relations, where you're working still with one-on-one, but also have the opportunity to scale your reach. So that's that how I explored that as a 20%. And 6 months in, if you know my deconstructing chatbot video series, that was my 20% project. And I enjoyed and had so much fun that I reached out to the team and I said, "How do I move?" And I did the internal interview process to move into developer relations.
Awesome, awesome. There is an urban legend that even if you're applying for a janitor role at Google, you got to write Node.js code and you got to understand the internals of Chrome. So, but it's been a fascinating journey. And on a serious note, Priyanka, I think what is unique about you and why you are a successful role model developer evangelist is your ability to cover the breadth of technologies and the ability to go into the depth when it is needed. I spent half of my life as a technology evangelist at Microsoft and AWS, and I know what it takes. It is very, very challenging because you're always on your toes. You wake up and figure out what's new, and then you invest time in learning that and then explaining and making it accessible to the community and the customer. So it's not definitely an easy job, though from an external perspective, it looks like all the developer evangelists have fun traveling, speaking, and making these videos. There's a lot of effort that goes behind the scenes, and I can completely relate to it. And what is actually very, very fascinating is the uh, the whole mechanics of this outreach. 20 years ago or 10 years ago, when I was still a developer evangelist, achieving scale was a huge challenge. We had to literally hop in and hop off from the flights to go speak at every possible conference, every possible community event, and host these community group events. And we could touch only like hundreds and maybe thousands of developers. But today, thanks to the social media and some of the emerging channels, like TikTok and Shorts and Reels and so on,
Yeah.
your reach is like just multiplying, and there is a repeat value to everything that you do, which you are exploiting really well. And I think every developer evangelist today has to invest in digital content creation skills. I think that's the learning that I see from your experience. So when I was a developer evangelist, there were two things. One was you got to get the knack of learning a new technology and explain that to a 4-year-old. That was the number one skill back then. Number two was how do you create force multipliers? How do you take what you learned and what you're excited about to masses, to tens of thousands of developers? That was the second skill, and you got to know how you can multiply that. And now, looking at Priyanka's success, I think the third most important aspect of being a developer advocate is content creation. You got to create extremely viral content, and it doesn't mean you create content that is irrelevant and has a very different flavor. You got to be relevant, you got to add value, and still you got to make highly viral and highly watched videos. So it's a very, very important skill. Now, on that note, Priyanka, I'm seeing emerging startups hiring developer advocates. And what actually concerns me is when the HR figures out talent and they want him or her to be in the organization, and they don't know what title to put on this new potential employee, they end up calling him as an evangelist or an advocate without having a proper job definition. So again, this has two dimensions or two questions to you. One, what do you think are the success metrics of a developer advocate or the developer evangelist? Number one. Number two, do you think becoming a developer evangelist straight out of college, does it really help the organization, or do you think it's important to have some kind of an experience, facing customers, building products, and then evangelizing? I want to hear your perspective on both.
Yeah. So I'll start with the second one because I get that question a lot, and I just wrote like a very short blurb about it on LinkedIn recently too, where a few of the folks that I'm mentoring asked, I would like to eventually move into developer relations, when would be the right time? And I always tell folks, it's the more experience you have under your belt working with customers or working on building the product, whether it's in software engineering or it's in product management or it's directly working with customers or in professional services organization, any of those, the more you can have that, the better, in order to be a good developer evangelist or a developer relations engineer, whatever the companies are calling it. I think it's called different things in different places, but it's very important to have that experience under your belt, because it brings two things. One is credibility. It makes you makes whatever you say or suggest, because you're literally telling people how to do things, or you're telling them your opinion on what's what you think is the is the good way to do it, or a different way to do it, right? And why should somebody listen to you or care about your opinion? That comes from how credible you are, and you can build your credibility based on all of these other experiences that I talked about, because that is what teaches you what can go wrong in a real world situation, what type of migrations actually exist, when do people run into issues, or what's good, what's not good in a certain situation. You can't really answer those questions or even think about them unless you've actually seen some of that in practical life. So I think in as far as like when companies are hiring developer advocates, I would look for folks who have certain amount of experience, because I consider this role to be something that brings immense value, right? Immense value, and that only comes with folks who have they these should be senior folks. They have seen a lot of different scenarios in technology in general, and with the evolution of all the different products. So I consider this role to be a very senior role, even though it's like an individual contributor role in most companies. And so that let's yeah, if you are somebody who is wanting to be a developer advocate, I would spend early years of my life or career learning and being in roles like software engineering, product management, and working directly with customers as sales engineers, solutions architects, roles like that. Build that solid background, and then few years from then you'll be yourself able to say, now I can actually be a great evangelist. And until that point, just spend the time in learning all of these things.
Absolutely, absolutely. So two key words, that I want the audiences to understand: credibility. Developer evangelism is not about showing cool stuff and going after the shiny new thing. It's about how credible you are in front of the customer or the community. People should respect you, and you gain respect by talking what actually makes sense, and it comes from experience. The second one is value. You got to deliver a lot of value from your evangelism efforts. So these are two critical attributes of any successful evangelist that I have seen. They are extremely credible in the community. They are delivering a lot of value. Every word that they say, every blog that they write, every demo that they do has value in it, and there is a takeaway from it. I think that is very important. So technology evangelism is not about spray and pray, where you do 100 sessions and you wait for one of those to become popular or viral. No, it's not that. You got to put in a lot of effort, first of all, to gain that to gain that respect and credibility, and that comes from experience. Second thing is, ask yourself, am I adding value? And that question has to be asked almost on a day-to-day basis, till you figure out how to package and what it takes. So, um, Priyanka, we are moving
I
into. Yep, go ahead.
I was gonna add just one more thing. Every blog I write, every video I create, I question it every step of the way. I question it when I'm writing the script. I question it if my blog has an outline. I question it to always ask, is this helpful? Who is this helpful to? Right? And and in what ways, who's my audience, and are they going to benefit from this? And you have to ask that and question that, like you were saying, every step of the way. But I also question every piece that I create, is this going to be helpful, right? And you have to do that because time is so precious these days. People are going to just scroll through the thing that you created. And if it's not valuable, then your effort and time also got wasted in the process. So that's a really big tip and advice that you just brought up.
Absolutely. You're competing with funny cat videos and a lot of viral content that is out there, and making your way out of all of that and still becoming viral and relevant is not an easy task. So excellent. We can go on and on with this. This is a very, very interesting and very important discussion. I think I'm going to set up another follow-up discussion with you exclusively on the successful characteristics, attributes, and personality of a developer evangelist, but that's for some time later. Now I'm going to switch gears and ask you some interesting questions, and I call this the rapid fire section. So I'm going to look at my script and call out some of these interesting questions. So let's get into the rapid fire. So
Rapid
so Priyanka,
fire.
what's your single most life-saving productivity hack? One liner.
Calendar. I organize everything in the calendar, to dos, everything. I've got 4 different calendars, reminders, actual calendar where people schedule time, and the reminder has got everything for the day to do. And there are like multiple things. I check them off and they go away.
Awesome. What would you be if not a technologist?
Artist, no doubt.
I guessed it. Yeah, you would have a very successful career as an artist. Excellent. So I know as an evangelist, you would have spoken at hundreds of events, but what is that single event, that made you go weak on your knees and make you very anxious?
I think two come to mind. Am I allowed to say two?
Yeah, yeah, go ahead.
The obviously the first one is always nerve wracking. The first time I went in front of like 1,000 people was in Amsterdam at one of the events in 2019, and oh, not Amsterdam. I think it was Milan. And this was I was demoing uh, Dialogflow chatbots, and all the prep that I had done, I felt like I was nervous. I totally felt it, all the nerves. But I had a few friends in the audience, and they said they could not feel it. So I count that as a success. So first time, I think everybody feels that. So that was my first time where I felt that was nerve wracking, um, and then there was a time when a demo broke on stage in front of 2,000 people. This was this was last year. But those are things you cannot control. It's like, how do you save a situation like that? So, with time, you just learn to save situations like that. And I think it went as if like, oh, it broke? Don't nobody
Yeah.
realized. So great.
That's an important skill, and let's talk more about that in our follow-up interview.
Yeah.
Rescuing a demo and acting as if everything is just normal and going on is again another very important skill. Excellent. Now I know you come from Madhya Pradesh, and I have a lot of friends from Indore and other cities of MP. So, poha, jalebi, or idli vada for breakfast?
Poha jalebi any day. I am from Indore. There is no doubt I will take poha jalebi.
I know. And okay, Priyanka, moving on to the next question. I know you travel a lot and you're constantly busy, but what can you cook under 10 minutes?
Maggie? That's
Is that
still my
available?
go-to.
Is that available in Silicon Valley?
Yes, it is. It is available in huge packs.
I'm not surprised. 2 minutes Maggie noodles.
Yeah.
Awesome. Given a chance, would you prefer to watch SRK's movie or Amir Khan's movie?
SRK's movies, because I just know the name more. I just watched Pathan. I am not a big movie person in general. but I have watched quite a few Shah Rukh Khan movies.
Cool. Did you like Patan?
I loved Pathan. I thought it was nice and it had a story, which usually Bollywood movies don't. So I had fun.
Nice. All right. So for vacation, would you choose Hawaii or Bahamas?
So I've been to Hawaii a few times. I've never been to Bahamas, so I would pick Bahamas.
Nice. Are you a cat person or a dog person? Do you have a pet?
I have a pet. I have a dog, and so I am a dog person, but I do love cats.
Excellent. Now, I don't want to miss the chance of asking this to a Google Cloud advocate. Cloud
Uh,
functions or Cloud run for serverless?
oh my God! Do not put me into this this position because the teams might kill me. But Cloud Run. Definitely Cloud Run.
I know. I love containers, and there are a lot of reasons why you would go to Cloud Run than Cloud Functions.
Yep.
Excellent. So I thoroughly enjoyed talking to you like always. Uh, so before we wrap up, Priyanka, I want the audience to take away one thing from you. So if you have to leave us with one thing, what would be that?
You can, okay, so I personally think everybody has to, whether you are a software engineer or work with customers or whatever your role may be, everybody should learn how to express themselves, to communicate in a really effective way. So I challenge everybody to write a blog every few weeks to explain whatever they are learning every few weeks, that just encourages you to make your communication skills better incrementally over time. There's no rush, but there are folks who want to actually get into roles where communication is extremely important. I think communication is important in every role, in every aspect of our lives. But if there was only one thing you take away from this entire conversation, um, work on communication skills. I think we all can get better at any level, from anywhere to anywhere. That is one thing I would encourage everyone to work on.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. It is super important about being very very effective in your communication, and there is no destination to that. It's a journey. You got to constantly improve that. So Priyanka, thank you so much for joining us on this inaugural episode of Community Star. You are a rock star, and it's been an honor and pleasure to have you on my show. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Ladies and gentlemen, that was Priyanka for you. Thanks for watching this episode. I'm going to bring you more rock stars from the community under the Community Star segment. Thanks for watching. This is Janakiram signing off.